What's good, people? Welcome to another edition of Power Trip here on the Got What You Need Network. First, want to apologize for the slow transition over to video. It's a little bit more of a daunting task than we first realized, especially with my co-host and co-correspondents in different areas. And in one instance, um, with Mickey Blunt's Devious One, he's actually in another country, he's located in Canada. So we're working on that, and we're going to get that done. So I just ask y'all to bear with us, please, and thank you. Be sure to support the other great podcasts on this great network. Um, we got Life and Love. We have the Black Male Podcast. We have the Encourage and Inspire podcast. And be looking out for that new mobile app that'll be coming real soon. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and surrounding areas. We got some nonsense going on in that Texas Senate race. And we just talked about the Kennedy Center and a few other miscellaneous topics, let's say. So we're going to start in the Twin Cities, right? So, I don't know, month and a half ago, kid, Nick Shirley, decided that he wanted to quote unquote expose fraud in, um, in Minnesota, targeting, um, Somali areas. And a lot of us were like, whoa, like, I don't like people being singled out, man, but fraud is fraud. Then later on, we find out that 78 people had already been charged, 60 people had been convicted, including the ringleader as described in legal documents, Amy Bach. Um, so my thing was this thing, something happened up there, yes, but it had already been adjudicated and taken care of from a legal standpoint, that there was no need to harass those daycares and, bring undue attention to those daycares and things like that. And especially in a situation where his family um, had been charged with fraud themselves. Give me a second, and I'll pull that up and read directly from the legal document so that we aren't trying to push for any type of false information. And it says here, public records show that Nick Shirley's parents were previously named as defendants in a bankruptcy trustee adversary proceeding involving improper and avoidable financial transfers. This was a civil bankruptcy matter, not a criminal case or conviction. This case was filed in July 27, 2018. To give you the case number by Chapter 7 trustee seeking recovery of assets for creditors. While no criminal wrongdoing was alleged or proven, it undercuts the posture of moral authority now being used to accuse others of fraud as fact. Transparency matters, especially when their son, known for repeated controversies, is leveling serious allegations against other people. So it just goes in line with the Republican and the GOP, hypocrisy, and every accusation is a confession. Um, and once again, there was a ringleader that wasn't Somali, and um, that wasn't disclosed until all the damage had been done. Um, and this woman, was made to forfeit like luxury vehicles and like all kinds of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, wait, a minute, I have something about her right here. So her name is Amy Bach. It's spelled Aimee. She's a former executive director of the nonprofit Feeding Our Future, and she was the central figure in what prosecutions call the nation's largest COVID area fraud scheme. She was convicted back March 19th, 2025, as a federal jury, found her guilty of all 28 counts. She faced including wire fraud, conspiracy, and federal programs bribery. Her penalties, a judge ordered her to pay back 5.2 million, the amount she personally gained from the scheme. The federal government has already seized 3.6 million from her bank accounts to apply toward that total. And she was immediately taken into custody following the verdict, and she faces a potential of at least 20 years in prison. But none of that information was brought up when the whole, oh my God, all that money that's being stolen from the Somalis, Omar's people, and that's why she should be deported. She's behind this and this, that, and the other. And it was a greedy white woman that knew that her involvement and status would make this scheme more doable, and she personally gained millions of dollars um, from the scheme. And it's a shame that we had to go searching for that information because that wasn't broadcast all over major media. But Somali daycares with a kid um, that's not even a journalist was carried on CNN. Once again on in Fox News. I mean, they're not news anymore, but still, the fact that it was carried nationally by all these major platforms, and a lot of it was misleading, and most of it were just flat out lies. And um, now Minnesota, and mainly in the Twin Cities, they're paying for it because the president used that as pretext to then send in ICE. And anybody listening, and once this is posted, you could comment if you disagree. But if you were staying in an apartment complex or whatever, and let's say ICE raided this apartment and arrested these people that were your neighbors and this, that, and the other, you'd be upset. But then what if later on you found out that credibly they were they were human traffickers. They was moving a lot of fentanyl and all this stuff. Like this stuff really, really happened. They just kept it low key or whatever. Most people wouldn't mind if they came in with warrants, with signed by a judge, with names of people. Hey, we're taking you into custody for immigration violations, this, that, and the other. Um, I'll give you even a less, let's say, drastic case. They pick somebody up and they basically say, hey, here you, and once again, unmasked with a warrant, and read the warrant with the person's name on it signed by a judge saying you overstayed your visa, and when you applied for an extension it was denied, and you were ordered to self deport and you haven't, so we have to take you into custody and we have to expedite your deportation now. although that would be a sad case, I think we could kind of deal with that, like, as long as we felt like it was fair. But people are getting picked up, um, aren't like, and then American citizens are being arrested and detained. And so people saying, oh, well, it wasn't like they got deported, they got arrested and released. They shouldn't have been arrested. I'm seeing videos of them literally just jumping out cars with guns drawn, on women and children. A federal judge had to order a 5-year-old kid and his dad, who both had legal documents to be here, to be released from custody and returned home. Like, all I'm saying is, I mean, at this point, nothing ICE could do would be acceptable because things have gotten so bad. But all they would really have to do is play by the rules. Eh, But instead, we have these untrained or like lightly trained, like thugs who just been given guns and basically given more power than actual law enforcement in the areas that they are performing these operations. There was an incident here in Jersey. I think they said it was near the Hoboken and Jersey City border where they were doing enforcement near a transit hub, and a local councilman was there and was like, hey, what's going on? Do you even have a warrant? And he like looked at the councilman and was like, you know what this is. We don't need a warrant, and I don't have to explain this to you. And we know that there are Proud Boy, Oath Keeper, and people who was part of January 6th who are now part of ICE. And imagine someone elected who got calls from his constituents to come out and check on something and to be spoken to by a thug federal officer. Like, and that's what I'm getting at. Like, there's no respect. Um, there's no real procedure or anything. It just seems like they just pop up in different areas and and just harass people. And then once people are taken into custody, like there's no due process. And I understand that a bunch of states are, I don't want to say a bunch of states, but let's say more than a few are starting to pass laws where ICE can't be masked. They must have warrants signed by a judge. Um, and they just can't randomly stop people, um, for speaking another language. Now, I know that's going to be fought because um, Judge Kavanaugh, who so eloquently wrote, that yeah, you can do that, and that's why they call them Kavanaugh stops now. So um, it's going to be a back and forth thing until enough Republicans, enough people in Congress decide to pull their funding until they agree to some real reforms. Now, once again, the opinion of ICE is too far, too gone to ever regain any kind of credibility or respectability. But the sad truth is they're not going anywhere either. So we're going to need some type of compromise into their methods. Um, we, and what I didn't speak on, and I apologize for that, is that they even murdered two citizens. Renee Good was trying to leave a situation in her neighborhood, um, and the officer, the ICE officer, shot her 3 times. And then what we're finding out is that um, they said she had a heartbeat for about 8 minutes after she had been shot, but that the ICE officers prevented a doctor who was on the scene from rendering care. Then we have, I got these names here, Alex Preddy, um, and he was attempting to render aid to a woman who had been pepper sprayed. He's a nurse at the VA. He was carrying a concealed weapon, then brandish it, and was legally carrying it. And then he was tackled, beat up, and then shot in the back 10 times. They had already disarmed him, and there was no reason for them to kill him, but murdered him right in front of everybody on the street as once again to kill people as a way to intimidate them. It is just an evil way to go about doing your job. Um, and the fact that even after they commit murder, it like they're protected even worse than when local police are involved in a officer involved shooting. Their identities are attempted to be protected. They're immediately moved out of the area and then put in another area, like not even taken off duty until there's an investigation or anything. They're just simply moved to another area and you continue on with your job. Now, the asshole that shot Miss Good, excuse me, he's in hiding because his identity was immediately found out, and they immediately, you know, took him and his family and put them in protection or what have you. So it's just a mess, and it's one thing if it was simply about a lack of due process or whatever, but we're finding out that there's rampant sexual assaults in the detention facilities. We have a measles outbreak in a Texas ICE facility that like doctors are sounding the alarm about. And I know you're saying measles, talk to RFK Jr. He decided that that vaccine wasn't important anymore or whatever, but something that we had literally eradicated, you know, is now making a comeback because all of these um, conspiracy theorists are now in places of power. So let's keep our eyes on Minnesota. They are fighting back. Um, I just want my friends up there to be safe. I mean, obviously, they're showing you that they'll kill you, just because you challenge them. Like they're walking up to people, getting information about them, taking their pictures, and like you're gonna be put in a database, and described as a domestic terrorist. And I'm like, the ICE officers are more of the domestic terrorists than any of the citizens who are simply protesting and recording. I, but I digress, and we're going to move on. So we have a real contentious Senate race down in Texas between Congresswoman Jacqueline Crockett and Congressman James Tallarico. Recently, this race took an ugly turn because it was leaked, from an alleged personal or private conversation, as Congressman Tallarico described it. But he described Congressman Colin Allred, as a mediocre black man. And saying that a mediocre black man dropped out, so now I'm facing an intelligent, capable black woman. And the attempt to insult Allred on the slide, all while trying to compliment Jasmine Crockett was corny, um, was racist, but this guy is sneaky anyway. Um, he was literally asked during a recent debate, had he taken money from an organization and did he know um, one of the, I guess, executive of the organization. And then it was later found out that he had indeed took money, and then they produced pictures of Talarico with the woman, and I saw um, Congresswoman Crockett get beat up because she voted yes on a bill that included, um, I think, money for Israel, and that one of her PAC had allegedly took money from APAC. So she was getting killed on this, and but every time we find out that Tyler Rico has taken money and that he's lied about it, like I haven't even seen the same people that went after Crockett to then go after him and say fair is fair, and and what's even worse is when he was um called on it, he lied about it or whatever, but they pretend as if his transgressions aren't even happening. Um, I think March 3rd is the primary, and I just hope that Texas doesn't make the wrong decision. And what I mean by that is I think it's enough evidence out there um, in regards to what the voters want and the type of fighter that the voters want. And Talarico taking time to talk about Joe Biden being a failure as if now we're in successful times is just amazing to me. Now, I'm no Joe Biden champion or what have you, but just think about if he hadn't gotten in the race back in 2020. Like Trump would have won. And I had mixed feelings about him dropping out because I just felt like, he earned the right to run again. And, I wasn't real vocal either way. I definitely didn't, advocate for him to drop out. Um, I just thought that if he felt incapable of doing the job, then he should do the right thing. But if he thought he could do the job, I felt like he had every right to stay in it. That's neither here or there, but my problem now is that we're seeing the current president do all the things that Joe Biden was accused of being and doing, and yet not nearly the media coverage about it, like no Jake Tapper book or anything. And there are reports that like he's going around with a bag, attached to him because um he doesn't have control of his movements. And and we were really beating up Joe Biden because of one bad debate performance. Like he's so bad that Trump tried to take credit on like at least a half dozen occasions for policies that were still in place that were good for said area, but that Joe Biden had initiated. So, um, I just don't think that Texas wants the same old, same old. And if the Democrats in Texas nominate Talarico, it'll be to their demise. I'm not saying Jasmine Crockett is a shoo-in, but I just do think that she's a breath of fresh air, and I think that she is what Texas needs at this time. A person that's not only fighting for her and her career, but has raised money for other candidates all across the country. It literally has to um, go around with security because of threats from MAGA, but she still is calling them out at every turn. Even with cornballs like Stephen A. Smith, being super hypercritical of her, but don't have that same smoke, in regards to like anything the president does or says, tweeting at 1 a.m., attacking late night talk show hosts and journalists and Trevor Noah, who had a Epstein dig about him at the Grammys or whatever. I mean, that's not presidential stuff. And you never hear, any type of smoke from like these black, I just try to call it down the middle, fake ass motherfuckers or whatever. Excuse my French, but it just burns me up. Like when somebody like that could go on their platform and just rip into a black woman or whatever, but don't have not any words for the president that's saying a lot worse. But speaking of him, imagine there was a business or venue or whatever that had 55 years of success and profitability. And as soon as one person took over, hijacked it, added their name, that building is being shut down for 2 years for quote unquote renovations. The Kennedy Center doesn't have to be renovated, nor does it need it. He's going to get a company to make a fake bid. He's going to keep the money. They're going to destroy part of the Kennedy Center, and it's going to be just like the East Wing ballroom, type of situation or whatever. And Congress is going to sit around and watch him steal more money. But the fact that so many performers have dropped out to the point to where they have to make up a fake construction excuse because they have to close coming in July is just a shame. It's a shame for the people of DC and surrounding areas who enjoy going there. Um, and like I said, for some people, it was part of like their culture, their nightlife, and to have that taken away from them just because we have um, greed and incompetence um, at the White House is just a shame. But that is my time. Appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Um, Sorry it's been a minute in between pods, but you know how that go. So much going on. It's hard um, to shape out a show because once you do that, something else has happened that you think you might have to report on or discuss or whatever. But once again, man, make sure you follow Got What You Need, Facebook and Instagram, um, and on TikTok as well. Be looking out for that mobile app and be sure to subscribe to all the podcasts on this network. All right. See y'all next time. Peace.